Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. For those of you following along, you know we're getting extremely close to that 1,000 subscriber milestone, major milestone. And on today's episode, I'm going to throw it over to you, Jeremy. You can find him on Twitter at DivStockpile to give yourself a brief introduction.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dave, and thanks for having me on. Really looking forward to our conversation today. As I've mentioned before on Twitter, I love all your conversations you've had with everyone else. So really great that you're bringing the community together. So my name is
Thank you.
Jeremy. I'm a avid dividend investor. Been investing for about 23 years now. It is my passion. I could talk about this stuff all day long. So happy to join the community and talk more about it. Personally, I live down in Florida and I have 4 children and a lovely wife and, just a regular dad doing regular dad things. So
Nice.
looking for, dividend income to sustain our lifestyle in the next few years. So looking forward to talking to everyone about that.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. Just before I hit start record, I was telling Jeremy that I'm dealing with freezing rain right now here in Canada on my drive home from work. So very much different than the weather in anywhere in Florida. I'm sure there's not a lot of freezing rain in Florida.
No, I think we got somewhere in 80 degrees Fahrenheit today. So that's quite warm for this time of year. So
Yeah,
definitely,
that's wow.
definitely no snow down here.
Cool, cool. Yeah, let's just get right into it. I guess any particular sector or company that you would like to start with?
Well, sure. So I have quite the selection of dividend stocks that I'm passionate about. I do have some of my favorites, but 2 of my big industries or sectors that I love investing in is clean energy and closed-end funds, so CEFs. So those are the 2 things I'm focused on mostly.
Cool.
With my timeline that I have on my dividend investments, I am looking for using that income in the next few years, probably within 5 to 10 years. So I'm looking at slightly higher yields in order to get us there quicker. So I
Right.
tend to focus on some of the higher end yields that you'll get. So we can talk a little bit more about those. But yeah, clean energy, REITs I'm really into. Financials are always a good one. So yeah, so we can definitely talk through all that.
Awesome. Yeah, you've hit a couple of my favorites there as well. As I'm sure you know from some of my past podcasts, I love my REITs. I
Mhm.
hold several of them. What clean energy companies in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. So my absolute favorite clean energy is Next Era Energy Partners. In the U.S. exchange is NEP. So they're a subsidiary of Next Era Energy, which I know is very popular in the dividend community. But what NEP does is it takes the clean energy assets of Next Era Energy and then develops long-term contracts with cities and municipalities to sell them clean energy. So you have
Wow.
your solar, your wind, your hydroelectric, things like that. And then because they get such long-term contracts with those municipalities, they're able to provide very high yields. They're considered what they call a yield co. So they spin off a lot of dividends. So right now, NEP, Next Era Energy Partners, gets a little bit over 4% yield, and they grow it between 12 and 15% a year. So it's a very good, top quality company that I like. Uh,
Nice. Excellent.
Over in the Canadian market, my favorite up there is Brookfield Renewable Partners. BEPC here in the US is what the ticker is. Absolutely favorite. That's my very first clean energy stock that I ever bought many, many years ago. And, it's done great for me. So I like them a lot too.
Do you follow at Newcomer Investor on Twitter?
I do. Yep.
Yeah, he loves his Brookfield. He loves
Yeah. So
so
I have so many Brookfield. I have BAM, I have BEP, BIP, I have all of them. So
nice. Yeah, no, it's a great ecosystem, a really nice basket of sort of everything in that Brookfield community, right? It's yeah, I don't own any of them simply because, as I've mentioned in the past, this isn't Pokemon. You can't catch them all, right? But
exactly.
um,
No, it's definitely something, as an investor, you really have to consider is how many different positions you really want to hold. I mean, there's what, 3,000 something companies here in the, that we could choose from. You know, it's hard to limit yourself. So you have to be very selective sometimes.
yeah, exactly. I would love to own 10,000 shares of all 3,000 of those companies, but it's just not realistic, right? We just don't have I definitely don't have the financial resources to hold that many companies and that amount of shares of all of them, but it would be amazing if you could, like, whatever. Anyways, that's a complete aside. I did have sort of a, not really a question, just a thought about, chasing those higher yields, sort of anything in there, like, I don't wanna use the word scare, doesn't probably doesn't scare you, but anything in there that concerns you about chasing higher yields?
Yeah, so you really have to do your research. I mean, to what you're alluding to, when you do have a higher yield, there tends to be more hesitancy and more risk involved with those types of companies. That's why you really have to dig in and make sure that the payout ratio is sufficient, sufficiently low. Make sure their earnings are increasing and they have future ability to pay those. So places like NEP that has the higher yield and higher growth, they've set out in their investor presentations how they plan on getting to those higher yields going forward. So I feel very comfortable with something like that. But with your closed-end funds and your higher yield individual stocks, you really have to do your due diligence and understand what the business is really about to make sure that they can maintain that dividend. So as long as you're willing to stay on top of it, I think the higher yields are perfectly safe.
Yeah.
You just can't pick any of them because there are some that are extremely risky.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and I that definitely circles back to the do your own research, do your
Mhm.
own diligence. This isn't financial advice, we're just 2 guys talking, but yeah, some of those higher yields are very tempting. When you see them, you're like, "Oh, wow, this company pays a 12% yield," or whatever, and you're just like, "But is that sustainable?" And you do have to dig into it, deeper, right?
Absolutely. So I tend to stay away from the extremely high yields. So things like mortgage REITs, I stay away from some of the business development companies. I just don't trust their business model. And especially for the mortgage REITs, the last 12, 13 years, we've had the best housing market that you could ever hope for. And those companies still didn't do very well. So imagine
Right.
how bad it's going to be when there's a downturn, which it seems like we're heading towards. So I just stay clear away from those types of companies. It's not in my wheelhouse. I don't trust them.
Understandable, yeah, very understandable. Uh, Getting into REITs more, so
Hmm.
I'm getting close to 40 guests on the Passive Income Podcast in 40 months. I'm not exactly sure where we're at, and I don't know the exact breakdown. I'm gonna say it's about 50-50 between Canadians and Americans, and I actually do have some Europeans coming up soon. At European DGI's coming up soon, Hailing Invest is coming up soon from the UK. But so, like, it's roughly 50-50 with Canadians and Americans. So, I'm gonna say about 20 American guests so far, and so far out of that, we're gonna say use the number 20. 100% of Americans have owned Realty Income, ticker symbol O, and I'm guessing you do as well if you love your REITs. And let's just, you know, go ahead and talk about Realty Income, ticker symbol O.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I do own them. I've owned them for a very long time. I have quite a large position in them, a few hundred shares, I would say at least. Yeah, I mean, for the U.S. market, they really are the top-notch quality REIT that you can invest in. I mean, 26 years of dividend growth, very consistent with their increases, very diverse set of properties that they control. So it really, you can't get much better. The dividend increases aren't spectacular, but you're going to get a stable, growing company
Yeah.
and stable, growing income with them.
Well, and it's nice when somebody gives you a raise and you didn't ask for it. You're just like, "Oh, I'll sure,
It's
I'll
the
take more
best.
money. Why wouldn't I?"
Exactly. No doubt. And, obviously the monthly payment is nice for those who,
Yeah.
are getting closer to using the money. It's easier to budget. I don't look specifically for monthly, but it is nice knowing that's going to come, every month on like clockwork.
Yep, for sure, for sure. All of my Canadian REITs are, paid monthly as well, and, I've mentioned it in past podcasts, like, I get it, 5% is 5%, whether it's paid out monthly or quarterly, but it is nice to see that show up in your, account every 30 or 31 days, whatever it may be, right?
Correct. Yep. Absolutely. Makes it very exciting. Keeps you motivated when you see them coming in all the time. And then again, once you're using it, it makes it easier to budget. You don't have to wait for those 3 month cycles to come in.
Yeah, 110%. And if I'm not mistaken, you said they're very consistent with their raises. They give a raise twice a year?
I believe it's quarterly. They give a
Oh,
small.
they're
Yeah,
a small raise every single quarter?
correct. Yeah,
4 times a year?
it's usually very small, and then one time a year they'll give a more substantial raise. You'll see something like 0.2, 0.3% increases every quarter, and then at the one time a year they'll do like a 3 or 4% increase.
Wow,
Hmm.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
very.
truly amazing.
I forget the exact number, but there's something like 600 monthly dividend payments that they've done, and a certain like 100 different raises over their lifetime or something like that. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, wow. That is impressive. That is very impressive.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely, that's a bedrock of the portfolio. I also have WPC, which is WP Carry. They're a diversified REIT. They have a little bit of everything. They also have some European properties as well.
Yep.
Other ones that I like is Invitation Homes is a really one that I like a lot. They have single family homes here in the United States. They're the largest public owner of single family homes. I think they have somewhere in the 80,000 different homes across the country,
Wow.
and they rent them out. And it's
Yeah.
high technology. You do it all through the website. It's very simple for renters, and obviously they collect those rents every month and then pay us as the REIT owners. So I like that one a lot. Other ones people may have not seen or heard about is Land, Land, is Gladstone Land. They have farm properties, so they sell like berries and almonds and things like that. So that one's been really good for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I really like that one a lot because farmland is only so much of it, and only so much that's you can grow on. And they
Yeah.
don't do things like wheat or cotton or things like that. They do more of the specialty things, as I said, like berries and nuts and grapes and things like that are higher profit margins.
That's very interesting, and you're right. And, it's been a huge problem in North America over the last 25, 50 years of paving over farmland, and
Mm,
once it's gone, and we can't replace it, or it would take generations, hundreds
mm,
of years, hundreds of possibly even thousands of years to turn that from a parking lot back into farmland, right? So,
exactly.
yeah, that is a very interesting one, and you're right, I had not heard of that one before, so I'm definitely gonna have to dig a little deeper into it.
Yeah, it's really good. So they pay out monthly too. Again, just happens to be that way. But one of their great things that they focus on is that the land has to have a self-sustained water source. So they make sure that there's water supply, so that they know that that's a long-term viable farm
Right.
that they're buying. It's not something that's going to have to deal with droughts and things like that. So so far so good. I really enjoy them. I've had them for years.
Yeah, that's great, that's great. I really appreciate, uh, farming in general, and, yeah,
Hmm.
huge shout out to anybody out there who is a farmer because you guys, without farmers, we all starve. It's
Exactly.
literally that simple, right?
Yep, and it's not an easy job either. Right? You're out there toiling with your back and in the heat and the cold and everything else. For providing us food, and so they don't always get the recognition and the credit that they need.
Yeah, and dealing with, is this gonna be a good crop year, a medium to good, or medium bad, or a really bad crop year, and you know, I don't know how they do it. I honestly don't know how they do it, but we definitely appreciate you very much.
Absolutely. So yeah, so I have quite a lot of REITs. I'd probably say between all my accounts, I'm somewhere in the 20 different um, companies that I have REIT investments in. So I won't talk about them all because I know we want to talk about some other things. But
Yep.
yeah, REITs are a big part of my portfolio.
Yeah, REITs are definitely a big part of my portfolio as well. I like to think of it that I have diversification just within my REITs. Like,
Hmm.
REITs that have retail spaces, REITs that have office space, REITs that own medical, REITs that own other things. Automotive properties is a not a big one in Canada, but I like it a lot. I don't talk about it a lot, and most people don't know about it, but that's just one that I like. So,
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, the REITs are a big part of my portfolio because, like I said, you can diversify right just within your REITs, and it sounds like that's what you have done as well, right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I tend to limit my position sizes to a pretty small percentage as my overall portfolio for that diversification. So my overall guidance is no more than 5% in any one company
Yeah.
and more than 15% in any one sector. So real estate would be one sector. So I cap it at 15%. just to keep that diversification.
No, that's pretty smart. That's pretty smart. I really do need to go over that for my own portfolio and just look at where my percentages are because I haven't looked in a long time, and I'm like, I really should break this down and see what I might have way too much of in one sector or not enough of in another sector or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about keeping, the income stream. So I'm a very conservative investor. I like to keep my money. So, I don't want to take any big bets on a single company or a single industry in case, every year a different industry does better than the other. So
Yeah,
I don't want to take a big gamble and, lose half my portfolio because I'm focused on a single sector. So I'd
yeah,
rather
no,
have the stable, consistent approach than shooting for the moon, if you will.
yeah, understandable, understandable, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah,
I get that for sure. Just slow and steady wins the race, as the old saying goes, right?
absolutely.
Now, you did mention way back
Okay.
10 minutes ago about financials, so maybe we'll jump into that sector next. And you also mentioned Brookfield in the Canadian market. So obviously, I'm sure you're aware of how much us Canadians, as investors, we love the Canadian banks. And yeah, anything you would like to talk about in whether it's any of the Canadian banks or in the financial sector, let's just dive into that
Sure.
banking and financial sector.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I know you've talked to other guests that have talked about the Canadian banks, and it is a extremely stable and profitable industry. So I do have TD up
Yeah,
in Canada. I also have BNS.
yeah,
So those are my two Canadian ones. Here in the United States, I have JP Morgan Chase, of course, and my absolute 100% favorite company ever is BlackRock. And so they're an asset manager
yeah.
here in the United States as well as internationally. So that's my number one stock, my favorite one of all times. I could sing their praises all day long. So I really
Well,
like
because
them a lot.
BlackRock literally owns everything.
They do.
They
Almost
just
almost $10 trillion worth of assets. They have their hands in pretty much every financial market that you can think of, both
yeah,
in the public space through their ETFs, their private equity markets, their institutional clients, their technology for financial services. They really have their hand in everything. And I'm a huge fan of Larry Fink, their CEO. I know a lot of people are dogging on him lately because of his ESG stance, but I'm all for it. I consider myself an environmentalist, so I'm I'm a big fan of Larry's. So yeah, BlackRock's my number one. I also
wow.
have a very large position in both MetLife, ticker MET, as
Yep.
well as Prudential, PRU. So yep, lots of financials out there.
So just to let you know, I pay my mortgage biweekly, and every 2 weeks when I pay my mortgage, some of that is going to your dividend for BNS.
I appreciate you.
And
I made good.
you may have seen my tweet today about buying a. I bought a couple BNS myself to. Uh, I'm working on turning the cash register around on a few of the companies that I pay my bills to every month, or like I said, my mortgage is biweekly. So it's like I'm just trying to get you to pay me to pay you.
Exactly. Exactly. I did a tweet the other day saying that I was going to the local theme park is called Universal Studios here,
Yep.
and it's owned by Comcast, which is a very popular dividend stock. I'm like, well, you're welcome, all Comcast shareholders. I just paid your dividend for the month with the amount of money I spent there. So I totally get what you're saying, but it totally makes sense. Pay your bills. The company like get dividends for the same companies you pay your bills to. Why not?
Yeah, like, I'm sure you've seen my tweets that say, "I'm just trying to turn that cash register around. Just turn the cash register around," right? So,
Yep, absolutely. So, Verizon and AT&T here locally for our cell phone usage, Comcast for the cable, things like that. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Might as well.
Yeah, same thing. I bought some more, Bell Canada today,
Mhm.
BCE. I think you did see that tweet because I think you liked it. But yeah, the exact same thing. I pay my cell phone bill to Bell Canada, so why wouldn't I just buy more shares of that company to try to, offset that bill a little bit every 3 months? And obviously, you're reinvesting your dividends,
Hmm.
but you still kind of have that in the back of your mind saying, "Okay, well, they've paid me $5 or $10 or
Hmm.
$50 or whatever it might be." And it's like, "Okay, well, my monthly cell phone bill." Oh, Canadians pay the highest cell phone bills in the world,
Hmm.
so
I've heard that.
um
That's crazy.
yeah, so but either way, just that little nugget in the back of your mind saying, "Hey, they've paid me $50. That's kind of $50 that I'm not paying back to them, even though I'm reinvesting it." But I
Yep,
think you kind of get the mindset. I think most dividend investors do get the mindset, right? Like sort of that
absolutely.
thought in the back of your mind that I'm helping myself, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I have BCE as well, so big fan of them as well. So
Yeah,
so I
great company.
appreciate you paying your bill. So
Oh wow. I think you're one of possibly the first American that has held this many Canadian companies. That's quite a few that you have.
yeah.
Circling back to the TD as well, I've noticed quite a bit of TD, that's Toronto Dominion, for those that don't know. Toronto Dominion, quite a bit of exposure for TD in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in Boston, there's, TD Gardens. It used to be called Boston Gardens. I think it's a new arena now, but obviously every stadium in North America now has a title sponsor, and it
Yep.
happens to be TD in Boston. Just watching random YouTube videos, I've seen people just filming in New York City, and there's a TD branch in the background. So
Hmm.
yeah, TD is obviously has quite a foothold in the United States now.
They do, yeah. So even in my city, down in Tampa, Florida, there's TD branches everywhere, and so
Wow.
they've been around for quite a while. So that's one of the appeals is they have both the Canadian market, of course, plus they have a very significant presence here in the United States. So they get the revenues and the customer base in both locations. So it spreads out the diversification. I feel like it's a little bit of a more conservative choice. So I
Yeah.
like them a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would back to your point about having so many. I feel like I'm a collector of dividends, if you will, and that's why I listed my Twitter and my blog dividend stockpile because I feel like I'm stockpiling dividend companies, and
Yeah.
so that's part of it. Yeah, if I find a company I like, I do the research, and it's a quality company. Why not? You know, I'd rather have income coming from 50 companies and spread out my risk than having 10 companies and one go wrong, like Algonquin, and then lose 40% of my income. So I'd rather spread it
Right.
out.
Oh, well, thank you for that stab in the heart with Algonquin Power.
Right. No, no, no. I'm an AQN shareholder too. Unfortunately, more like a bag holder at this point. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think we all got stuck into that one. For the longest time they were proving themselves. Growing their dividend. Their management presentations were all positive, and things were going great. But then when these interest rates started increasing, and they had those variable rate loans over there, they just got stuck in it. And so by time us as investors really got a wind of that, the stock price had already gone down. The writing was on the wall about the dividend cut. So it's hard to get out of it at
Yeah.
that point. So I'm just going to ride it out.
I'm in the same boat. Um, I think luckily last week when that dividend cut was announced, we all knew it was coming.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it was a lot easier to take because it was not a surprise to
Yeah.
anybody. And like I said, I'm in the exact same boat. I don't have a large position in AQN either, and it's just I'm gonna hold the bag, as you said, and see what
Hmm.
happens. I did put out a tweet last Thursday or Friday about AQN saying, "Hey, right now everyone is fearful of AQN. Is now the time to be greedy? Should I be buying more at this low price and see where we are in 5, 7, 10 years?"
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that idea?
Yeah, it's not a bad idea because obviously at this point you know what the damage is and you know what the path forward is going to look like. So if it's something that fits in your risk tolerance, it definitely makes sense now that the price has been cut in half. And with the dividend cut, now they have the financial resources to build back up the company. So I think there's a valid point there. For me
Mhm.
personally, I have such a large position in them already that I don't feel comfortable adding to my position at this point. Again,
Yeah,
I,
that
I
makes
try to
sense.
limit my position sizes, and I think AQN is around 2% of my portfolio. So I'm not quite ready to keep adding to it at this point. Maybe a couple more quarters to see how they're doing, and then I'll make that decision.
Right. Well, and as you can imagine, that tweet had a variety of mixed responses of like, "I'm not touching them with a 10-foot pole till the management team is replaced," and, on and on, so many different types of responses, but, yeah, so that's
Yeah, it's quite unfortunate, and I wish they wouldn't go so far into the regulated utilities. I think that's a mistake. those are very capital intensive businesses to get into, and a lot of regulations. I feel like if they would have focused more on the renewables, more of the growth engine type
Right.
of investments, I think they would have been better. I think this Kentucky Power is a mistake. I'm hoping that they don't push forward with it. Not sure you're familiar with Kentucky, but it's not exactly the fastest growing area here in the United States. So for them to pick that as a location just seemed a little strange to me. Um,
Yeah, I only know 2 things about Kentucky, and that would be the Kentucky Derby and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
there we go. So I'm also a big fan of um, ticker AY, which is Atlantica Sustainable Infrastructure. And AQN owns like a 40% stake in AY. And so I'm hoping that they would consider selling off AY to some other investor, maybe even Brookfield, and
Right.
taking that money to shore up AQN a little bit more.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would definitely make sense.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens, as part of, due diligence and making sure that you have your diversification and your risk management, because you never quite know what was good a year ago is not good now. And
Yeah.
so sometimes you just have to take that hit as an investor.
Cool, cool. Anything else in energy before we move on?
So surprisingly, I don't have any energy, quote unquote, energy stocks at all, except for in my ETFs. So I don't
Mhm.
invest in any kind of oil or gas or anything like that. And
Yeah,
that's a
sorry, I should
personal.
have said energy, utility. I kinda lumped them together with
Yeah, so I
Algonquin,
have
right?
a lot
But
of utility, but energy I stay away from. So no oil and gas, no pipelines, nothing like that. Just as a personal choice for me, based on my environmental mindset,
yeah,
that while I know that oil and gas are going to be around and it's a very big part of our economy right now, I definitely don't see that as a long-term future. I'd rather focus on the renewable energy, and so that's why I'm focusing my investment dollars.
interesting, interesting. Yeah, so I think again that tweet today where I showed my buys of Bell Canada and BNS and Hydro One. And so yeah, Hydro One is another one that I'm starting to again trying to turn that cash register around. Now, I think it's over 95% of people in Ontario depend on Hydro One for their electricity and power. So it's like, and they, good dividend and potential for dividend growth. There probably will be dividend growth. I've just kind of started dollar cost averaging into that one over the last, I guess, just 2 months now, last month and this month. And so, yeah, that's another one that's on definitely on my radar for 2023.
I'll have to take a look at that one, Hydro One. Yeah, the
Yeah,
local utilities around here, you have like your Duke Energy is here in Florida, NextEra Energy is here in Florida, but our local water supplier is run by our municipality, so you can't invest in them. So
yeah,
it's a little different down here.
cool, cool. Yeah, Hydro One, definitely take a look at it. I think I picked it up today for 36, maybe $37 Canadian per share,
Hmm.
and I think I bought 2 or 3 shares of all 3 of those ones that I've mentioned today. Bell Canada, Bank of Nova Scotia, and Hydro One. So, and yeah, obviously they're good Canadian companies paying a dividend and just turning that cash register around.
Exactly.
So we've talked about REITs, energy, banking, financials, a little bit about telecoms. Actually, a kind of
Hmm.
a fair bit about telecoms. Another sector I really like to get into is, and I kind of lump the two together, consumer staples and consumer discretionary. And
Yeah.
obviously, in the US, you have some fantastic, amazing companies such as Walmart, Costco, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, and so many more. Obviously, you can kind of like lump Johnson and Johnson and Procter and Gamble into that as well. You can argue
Hmm.
Johnson and Johnson with the medical or Medicare healthcare side. But yeah, let's just talk about consumer staples and consumer discretionary if you want to get into any of that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of funny. I was listening to the ones you were rattling off, and I own all of them. So, um, Walmart and Target here in the United States are obviously the big ones. I shop at Walmart all the time.
So
I
do
don't.
I.
I'm not ashamed to say I'm a cheapskate when it comes to certain things.
Yep.
So Walmart works for me. So I have an investment in them. Of course, Costco is a big one. Obviously, it doesn't pay a high dividend, so it's not a large position for me, but I do own that one. Procter and Gamble definitely have. One that you didn't mention is Unilever.
Right.
So UL. So I have a pretty good sized position in them. They do a lot here in the United States and a lot in Europe. Um,
Yep.
it's nice to get a little bit of that international diversification there. Of course, I have Home Depot and Lowe's. Those are two staples for every dividend investor, I think.
Yep.
So, yep, yeah. I'm pretty well diversified, so I probably have the majority of the ones that the typical dividend investor has.
Nice.
Yeah, you really can't go wrong, especially when you're talking about things like the WalMarts and the P&G. People are always going to need their products. They're always going to go shopping there, no matter what the economy's doing. So as long as you're buying it at a good price and planning on holding it, you'll probably do very well with both of them.
Yeah. So just 10 minutes that way. That way is the closest city, and it's a small city, 10,000 people. But somehow back in the 90s, when like the first NAFTA agreement was signed, and 90% of, or let's say 85% of manufacturing from both Canada and the United States went to Mexico.
Hmm.
Somehow this city did extremely well in retaining its manufacturing like industrial park. And yeah, so basically I'm just getting to a point here, sorry. There is a Procter and Gamble plant just down the
Oh,
road, not too far that
nice.
way.
Okay.
And then
Very
the
cool.
next town over, about 25 minutes that way, maybe 30 minutes that way, is it's a PepsiCo owned. They make the Quaker products there, but that's under the PepsiCo umbrella. And so yeah, like it's very interesting to see right there, kind of right in front of your face, these companies that we talk about all day, every day on in the dividend Twitter community. I talk
Mhm.
about with all my guests on the podcast, and yeah, it's like I know right there, right over there, not too far
Yeah.
that way.
Exactly.
There's
No, it's great to invest in companies that you see and that you use on a daily basis.
yeah,
To your point, Pepsi and Coke, we use those products every single day, and they're great companies. So, yeah,
yeah,
I definitely agree. Yeah, here locally we have a lot of distributors like the Coke distributors. They have a bottling plant nearby. Pepsi has a distribution center, so we see them everywhere. And of course, when you walk into your local Walmart or your grocery store, you see their products everywhere. So you know that they're doing well.
yeah, exactly, 110%,
Sure.
110%.
Yeah. So I know
Oh
you like
wow,
healthcare, so we didn't really talk about that. So
sorry, which one?
healthcare.
Oh yeah, let's dive into it. Obviously, a huge difference between healthcare in Canada and the US, but how do you play the healthcare? Well, like I mentioned, Johnson and Johnson kind of, and it's my understanding that they're going through kind of a split where they're splitting the healthcare side and the consumer side, and it's my understanding that that investors will have some kind of probably stock split where you get one or two of each.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so Johnson and Johnson, as some other guests have mentioned, is split into three different um, groups, if you will. And so two of those groups are going to stay within the old Johnson and Johnson, and their consumer division is going to be split off into a new company. So current J&J investors will get shares in the new company. And from the news releases that they provided so far, the dividend should be split evenly between the three organizations. So they've promised that the dividend won't decrease; it'll just be split between the two companies. So yeah, so we're looking forward to that. I wish they would have stayed together because that's one of the things that made it appealing of Johnson Johnson is it's kind of like its own healthcare ETF, if you will, because they have
Yeah,
bits and pieces in so many different products. But so we'll see what happens when the split, see how the new company works. Obviously, we use Band-Aid products and Crest products and all those different things that they use.
yeah.
Sorry, Crest is a PG, but all their different household products. So I plan on keeping the new company and see how it goes. So
Interesting. Any other healthcare plays that you have or have on your watch list or interested in?
yeah, so I definitely have a lot. So Merck, MRK is a big one I have. Pfizer, PFE, I have both of those. Amgen is another really big one in the healthcare space. So those are mostly drug manufacturers.
Yep.
AbbVie, of course, the darling of the dividend community. So I have that one. Have a tiny position in Abbott Labs, but really not much of anything. I prefer AbbVie more than that. And of course, a large position in Johnson and Johnson. On the REIT side, I have MPW, so that's
Hmm.
my real estate exposure in the healthcare space. I think that's it, but I'm probably forgetting a couple. As I said, I have too many sometimes.
Yeah, well, and honestly, that's pretty much the only way I do play the healthcare in Canada is through my REITs. I have one called Northwest Healthcare. Actually, I grabbed a couple more shares of that one today as well. Where
Nice.
is like they own the doctor's offices, the medical
Mhm.
clinics, and the actual buildings. Another one I own is EXE, and they have like the long term care and the seniors home.
Mhm.
Another one that's been on my watch list forever is called Chartwell, and they also own like the long term care and seniors homes. So yeah, that's kind of the only way so far that I've found to play the healthcare sector in the Canadian market because obviously with universal healthcare,
Yeah.
there's just not, like, the option to go and buy, say, a healthcare insurance company or something like that, right?
hmm Do you have exposure to? Do you have the ability to buy U.S. companies if you wanted to?
Yeah, I do. The probably the primary reason that I don't right now is the exchange rate has not been favorable for several years now, so it's very, very I'm sure as you know, buying the Canadian companies, you're like, "Oh, wow, I'm getting this Canadian company at a great deal,"
Yeah.
because the exchange rate is very favorable the other way for Americans investing in Canada, not so much for Canadians, investing into the US right now. And then the second thing is I don't want to get into the headache of the taxes right now.
hmm
I'm happy just investing into my Canadian companies and down the road, maybe that I'll take a look at that and say, okay, I'll deal with this now. But as of right now, for me, I'm like, okay, again going back to your point of so many companies is like I can find enough companies listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange that I'm very happy with that I don't need to look at the U.S.
hmm
market. And
hmm
with that said, obviously there's thousands of great U.S. companies, like as we mentioned in the consumer staples sector, Walmart, Costco, Pepsi, Coke, just those four right off the top. Johnson and Johnson, Procter and Gamble, another two. Like you could just list an endless amount of companies, like
Yeah.
American and U.S. companies. So yeah,
Yeah.
maybe sometime down the road I'll look into it, but as of right now, no, I'm just kind of focused on the Canadian companies and growing my portfolio that way.
Yeah, so I know here in the United States we have a tax treaty with Canada where if you
Yeah.
get dividends from Canadian companies, you can get it reimbursed for your during tax season. Do you guys have that the other way around, where if you have
Yeah,
American
so
or
you have to hold them in an account called an RRSP, which is a registered retirement savings plan. And so yeah, I don't because I'm not a tax guy, I don't know the exact specifics of it, but I know that you pay less taxes or maybe I don't know if it's no
okay,
taxes or a lot less taxes if you hold your if you have your American holdings in that account as opposed to any other account. So for those Canadians listening, yeah, do your own research, but if you're looking at American companies, put them in your RRSP.
good advice. Not financial advice, but good advice.
Yeah, right. And
Nice.
speaking of another sector that is just has so many great American companies, technology,
hmm
you have your Apples, your Microsofts, Amazon, Facebook, and again, the list goes on with these great
Yeah.
American companies. I even put Tesla into the technology sector. And actually, I don't know if you follow Barry Milligan on Twitter
hmm
as well. Yeah, you do. I was talking to him a few days ago, and he's like, "I'd even put John Deere as a technology company these days. Like, have you seen a brand new tractor?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And again, full circle back to farming, right? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
so.
Yes.
Anyways, yeah. Any thoughts on technology? Anything in technology?
Yeah, so it's funny because to your point, like Deere, John Deere, and some Caterpillar, and all those companies, it's all about technology now. So it's amazing how
Yeah,
technology is just in everything. I mean, you look at your refrigerator; it's full of tech. My washer and dryer, you can use your cell phone to turn it on. Like it's amazing what the technology is out there nowadays. So technology is one of my smaller positions, to be honest, and because a lot of the companies don't pay really high
yeah,
dividends. So I have a tiny position in Apple. I have a decent sized position in Microsoft. I do have Google and Amazon as kind of my older legacy positions. I've had them, for forever. But I'm not really focused on the non-dividend paying companies right now because I
right.
do plan on getting to the point where I am work optional off of dividends. So I'm going to focus my investments there. And that's one reason why Apple is not a very large position for me, because the yield is, less than 1%.
Right.
And it's only growing about 10% a year. So it's going to take a very long time for that dividend to be substantial enough to pay my bills. So yeah, historically it's been a great growth stock, but for dividend purposes, if you're really focused on living off dividends, Microsoft and Apple is really not going to do it for you.
No,
So I do
definitely.
have a little bit of IBM. I've had some other ones. I'm trying to think of them.
Texas
Can't
Instruments.
think of the name. Um, so like Texas Instruments is one that I have in the technology space, and there's a couple others, but it's definitely not my main focus right now.
Understandable. Yeah, you're just trying to stockpile dividends, dividend stockpile,
Yeah.
and you're obviously focusing on some of the higher yields to try to get there
Mhm.
a little bit quicker. So very understandable that you're not looking at things that are 1% and less, and just kind of
Exactly.
holding what you already have, I guess, right?
Exactly. So my kids have dividend portfolios, and they have the things like the Apples and the Microsofts because they're 12 and 13 years old. By the time they turn 50, that's nearly 40 years of compounding. So it makes sense for them and for people who have a very long time frame. But
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s. I plan on being financially independent by 50. So I really only have a short time period where I can let my money grow.
Yep.
So I need to focus on the ones that pay a little bit higher right now.
Yeah, you and I, again, we're in the same boat where it's like, in 5 or 10 years, I want to
Mhm.
be work optional, and we'll see.
Absolutely.
We'll see if we get there, I guess, right?
Oh, I'm gonna get there. I'm
Well,
committed
life has a funny way of throwing curveballs,
to
if you haven't
it.
noticed. And I'm sure by the time you're in your 40s, you have noticed this.
Of course, but I'm gonna do everything in my power to make it happen. So,
Nice, good, good stuff.
yeah.
Transportation. So
Mm,
again, you're very knowledgeable in the Canadian market. So a lot of my past guests, Canadian guests, are absolutely in love with the Canadian railroads
mhm,
for obvious reasons. There's two main players. There's nobody else coming in to all of a sudden compete with them. The railroads are built. Nobody's going to build a railroad right beside them. And yeah, so obviously they control a majority of the transportation in the country, coast to coast.
mhm.
And obviously there are also some just even trucking companies that you can invest in as well. But yeah,
Yeah,
again, circling back to the farming and how we depend on the farmers, well, we also depend on the transportation of those goods from the farm to the grocery store to your house, right? So, I guess
absolutely.
anything in transportation that you think about or
Yeah.
go for
So
it.
I have a few. So I have CNI, CNR up there,
Yep,
Canadian
CNR.
National. So I have that one. It's a smaller position. Again, the dividend's not very high, so it's not my focus area.
Yep,
Another one of the transportation that I have and I really enjoy, which not a lot of people have, is called Triton International. TRTN is the stock symbol. They actually are the largest lessor of containers that go on the big ships across the oceans.
yep.
They own the shipping containers and they lease them out to all the people transporting goods around the world. So that one's a really good dividend pair, good increases. So that's one way I play transportation.
Yeah,
The other
those are
way is
important as well. Those containers
absolutely.
are just as important as the railroads and the trucks and the truck drivers.
Exactly. So I focus it there because the dividend is really high right now. The other way I play it is through infrastructure. So instead of owning the railroads, I'm owning things like Brookfield Infrastructure
Yeah,
Partners, where they control the ports, they control the toll roads, things like that. So a lot of these cities and countries out there aren't going to have the financial ability to invest in all the infrastructure that we need. So they're going to turn to companies like Brookfield Infrastructure to pay for and run those facilities. So I've taken that approach and going. It's kind of like the picks and shovels type of approach to the gold rush, where I don't want to be the ones moving the goods, but I'll sell you all the tools that you need to get there. And
right.
so I really like Brookfield Infrastructure a lot. I have a very large position in that company.
Oh, you and Anthony must get along great on Twitter.
Yeah, so I love Twitter. I love hanging out with everyone there. It's such a great community.
Definitely is. Definitely is. So that's a lot. That's pretty much all of the sectors that I generally go over. I do want to, for those watching on YouTube, here is dividend stockpile. Is it dividendstockpile.com?
It is. Yep, correct. Yeah, so
And
this is my
yeah,
blog. So I've been doing it for about a year and a half now. Um, my goal with this is really just education. I'm a huge proponent of financial literacy and financial education. So I post a lot of different articles there. Things that are going on in the dividend world, some motivation to keep going. Share my personal story and how I look at companies. I do analysis of certain companies and certain funds. I also do a lot of valuation posts. So, every once in a while I'll say, okay, here's the 20 or 30 undervalued dividend companies to look at for this month, those types of things. So I try to put it out there to help people, because when I first started dividend investing way back in the day, there wasn't this community out there. There wasn't a lot of dividend focused blogs or YouTube or any of those things at the time. And
right.
so I would have loved to have a resource like we have today. And I just want to be a part of that. So that's why I started the blog. I try to post at least once a week, but sometimes, depending on what's going on, it varies. But yeah, so you can go through all my blog posts. There's a search button down at the bottom, different categories. So if you're focused on certain things, you can click on it to get information. So it's really just education, motivation, things like that. So yeah, so far so good. I really enjoy doing it. Hopefully everyone can take a look and add a comment or two if you like what you see. But yeah, I appreciate you presenting this.
Yeah, definitely know. I'll put a link in the description below to get to this website. And yeah, that's great. Okay, I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Is there anything you don't own?
A lot of people ask me that, because on my website I have my portfolio listed on there, so you can go to see all my different holdings. And I have a bunch of ETFs. I have a bunch of closed-end funds, so that obviously gives you exposure to hundreds, if not thousands, of companies through those. SCHD is my absolute favorite. You'll see on the top of my blog, I just did an article about SCHD, which I know I don't think Canadian investors can invest in it, but here in the United States, it's the best dividend ETF out there.
Yep.
So between that and my individual companies, I probably do have 60 or 70 different companies, maybe even a little bit more. As I said, I stockpile them. I just collect them as I see them. So what I don't have,
Dividend stockpile.
you got it. So I don't have anything in the energy space. I don't have any tobacco stocks. And the other category of companies I don't invest in would be like private prisons and things like that. So those are the three categories that I will not invest in. So no Altria, no Philip Morris, none of those. And
Yeah.
as I said before, none of the oil and gas companies either.
So you're also ethical,
I
an
try to be.
ethical investor as well.
Obviously, ethical is in the eyes of the beholder. So what's ethical to one person is not for the other.
Yeah.
But to your point earlier, there's a wide universe of companies you can invest in. So if you don't believe in the product or believe in the mission of the company, why would you invest in it? And so for me, again, like, I don't believe in tobacco. My father died of lung cancer from smoking for his whole life earlier, so it's a personal thing for me. Obviously, I know it's a great company when it comes to the shareholder returns and the dividend, but I've made a personal choice not to invest in that because of my personal beliefs. And same
Yeah,
with the
no, that's
oil.
110% understandable.
Absolutely. And so with oil and gas, while yes, I have a car that I use, and I go on airplanes that use fossil fuels. I'm hoping that by investing in companies who have a renewable energy tilt toward them, I can help invest in the future. So that's kind of what I'm focused on.
Interesting. Okay, another quick final question.
Hmm.
What company that you don't own is like the highest on your watch list right now?
Oh, wow.
Or even the top 3 that you would like pick between the top, either way you want to answer it, a top
Huh.
one or top couple.
Interesting. Interesting. I have so many.
I want to build my stockpile
Right.
higher.
Exactly. Exactly. That is a good question. So the one that I've been eyeing recently, and it's not a company, it's a fund, is called IDVO. So a lot of people in the dividend community have heard of Devo, which is a covered call ETF that focuses on dividend companies, but they have an international version. And so I've been really looking at that one. So IDVO is one I've been looking at. Um, I'd love to increase my exposure to Costco. I honestly have a very, very, very tiny position, probably only a couple shares. So if that one ever
Right.
got to a reasonable price, I think that would be another good one to do. Um, hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I should have come prepared for that one, but
Well, I didn't tell you I was gonna ask that. It is kind of a surprise question, but I
yeah,
I I got thinking about it as we got talking. It's like, wow, you have so many,
I do.
and like you said, so many more through your ETFs and
Hmm.
everything. It's just like, there's gotta be another one out there that you're looking at going, "Hey, I'd like to add that to my stockpile."
You're right. Yeah, so maybe I'll post something on Twitter once I think through it. But yeah, I feel very comfortable with the number of positions I have so far. I'm not necessarily actively looking, but if I identify one that the valuation is right, or the dividend growth. For instance, I started really beefing up my Brookfield exposure after they did the split. So
Right.
I'm heavily focused on adding to BAM right now. And so, I'm opportunistic. So if I find something that makes sense or the valuation is good, I'll add it to my stockpile, if you will. But I'm
Yeah.
not actively trying to find more positions at this point.
That's also understandable. It's like, it sounds like you have so many,
Yeah.
and just keeping track of what you
Mhm.
already have, it's probably a not quite a full-time job in itself, but a job in itself.
Yeah, but that's one thing I like about dividend investing is that if I was a growth investor, I would feel like I would have to stay on top of all these companies and check on them on a quarterly basis to make sure that they're going the way I expect them to go. I mean, look at Tesla over the last year; it's gone down 70%. Everyone thought that that was going to be the next big thing, and now it tanked. It can happen so quickly on when it comes to your growth companies. Dividend companies, obviously, most of them are well-established, consistent, profitable companies that you don't have to check in on all the time. So, something like a Walmart, I never worry about Walmart. I never worry about Johnson and Johnson because I know that they're going to continue to perform. So even
Yeah.
though I have a lot of positions, I don't have to spend a lot of time on every single one of them.
Yeah, no, and you're right, like, Walmart, 8 o'clock in the morning, there's lots of people there from depending on where you are, they're gonna open at, say, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., depending on the size of your city,
Hmm.
and there's gonna be people in that store all day, every day, 7 days a week from open to close, and you're right, you don't worry about it because they're making sales,
Hmm.
and the company is profitable, and they're gonna continue to pay their shareholders like the majority of these dividend paying companies. Obviously, again, you run into some problems sometimes, like we did last week with Algonquin Power. But that's also part of the. I don't want to call it a game, but it is kind of a game, right? That's
Hmm.
part of the process of you're picking these companies, you're hoping for the best, and and you're kind of planning for the best too, because these dividends are, again, you want that, you know usually, say a yearly raise in a growth, dividend growth investing, which is, in my opinion, is better than just straight growth investing, where you're looking at some company that you hope goes from $4 a share to $40 a share, where it's like, okay, if this company trades sideways between 12 and $15 forever, but they're paying me a dividend every month or every quarter, I'm
Exactly.
okay with that,
It,
right?
it's a totally different mindset. You have to look at the income and the future income. Capital appreciation is great. We all expect it, and if you have a quality company, you will get the capital appreciation. But if you focus on the dividend payments and the dividend growth, you'll be able to sleep a lot better at night, and that's what I try to
Yeah.
do for sure.
And then just a twist on that other question about, any companies on your radar, any Canadian companies on your radar other than Brookfield and CNR that you've already mentioned, but any other, and Canadian banks, or I guess
Yeah.
you only mentioned owning the 2 Canadian banks, so I guess you could pick some of the other ones if those are on your radar. Anything in the Canadian market that's on your radar right now?
Yeah, so the one that's been on my radar for a while, but I never took the leap on is Fortis. So that's
Yep.
definitely one that I would be interested in. Um, Obviously, the dividend history of Fortis is spectacular. You can't say anything bad about that one. So that's probably my next Canadian one if I had to. Also, Power Corp, I think, is another one that I've been hearing really good things on up there in Canada.
Yep.
So that's another one that's. I have a watch list of 100 different companies, but you know
Well, I think we
I
all do.
decide if it's better than something I already have because I already have so many, as I said before.
Power, that's ticker symbol POW.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have I have some of not very many, like
Yeah.
I think maybe 10 shares of that one. So
Yeah, so on YouTube, I follow Brandon Beavis, which is up there. He's a Canadian investor up there, and
mhm.
he's really big on Power Corp. So I've been listening to some of his videos about that. So
Okay, to finish off, non-dividend, non-investing topic, and you're there in Tampa Bay,
hmm
Florida. And so Tampa Bay Lightning, Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
yep,
Tampa Bay Rays.
yep.
What are your thoughts on any of them?
Definitely a Lightning fan. Of all the teams here, Lightning is definitely it. My wife and my boys went to the playoff game last year to watch them because they were in town here. It's like 20
Nice.
minutes from my house is where the arena is, so it's super close. Um, the Buccaneers, have been good and have been bad. So it's kind of a love hate relationship with them. So, obviously it was a big loss this year. We got eliminated, but, we'll see what next year brings. Not a big fan of baseball in general. It's not my thing. So,
Yep.
while they have the Rays here in town, we don't really follow them very much.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and well, obviously Tampa Bay Lightning, they've been to the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row and champions 2 of those 3 years. So
Yep.
yeah, I'm sure that's very exciting to watch a team that's obviously that good, right? The pretty much the best team in the league over the last 3 seasons. So
Yeah, it's definitely been exciting to be here, going to the games, going to all the parades and celebrations and things like that over the years. So yeah, it's nice to,
awesome.
you don't think of Florida as a hockey town or a hockey state, but the Lightning have done extremely well. So very, very proud of them. Happy to have them nearby.
Yeah. No, I think it was smart of the NHL to expand into Florida just because there's always so many Canadians in Florida that it was like, this is going to do well kind of no matter what. And then
Absolutely.
they actually end up becoming good teams as well. So it's like that helps.
Yeah, exactly. No doubt. Yep.
Okay, awesome. In ending, any other final thoughts before we sign off?
Yeah, so I appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I would just say to anyone out there that's listening, get started. Get started with investing. Even if it's $50, you'll be surprised how quickly the snowball really starts going. Investing, specifically dividend investing, has changed my life. It really has. It gave me the opportunity to make decisions in my life that I might not have been able to before. Like, my wife and I talk about, okay, well, what would it look like if one of us doesn't work and we just use our dividend income to supplement the other? What does it look like when we're 50 or 55 and we're able to live off our dividends and spend time with our children or spend time with traveling or whatever it is that we want to do? If I wasn't an investor, I would never have those options. I would feel like I would have to work forever.
Yep.
So it's never too
Just
early.
get started.
Yes, it's never too early, never too late. Just get started, commit to it, act like it's part of your monthly bills. Your investing is a bill. Make sure you pay
Pay
your bill.
yourself first.
Exactly. So
Pay
that's
yourself
really it.
first.
Get the education, reach out to everyone on Twitter, especially DivTwit. I mean, it's a
Yep.
great group of people. They'll answer any of your questions. Get the education and just get started is what I would say.
Yeah, that goes back to my Moneyball reference of like just get on base.
Exactly.
Just get on base.
Yep.
And you're right. You start with 50 bucks out of every paycheck, and then, down the road, maybe you increase that to 75 or $100 out of every paycheck, or do like I do. The first paycheck of the month goes to paying bills. The second paycheck goes primarily more to my investment account. But even that first paycheck of the month, I'm going to take 50 bucks out of that first and pay myself first and then pay my bills.
Exactly.
And, so that's just the way I do it. But obviously there's so many different ways to do it, but yeah, pay yourself first, get started, and that is great. Are we gonna call that financial advice? I think we can
Yeah,
say
I,
that's
I,
financial
I
advice.
think we can swing that one because that one is that'll be a good choice for everyone. So I
That's
think we're
pretty
safe
solid.
on yeah. So
Okay, so yeah, again, thank you so much for spending well, we're up to an hour of your time with me, recording another amazing conversation here on the Passive Income Podcast. For those of you still watching here on YouTube, please subscribe. I mean, you're still here with us an hour later. It's pretty much the rules. Just hit the subscribe button.
awesome.
And with that said, we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.